Hey, what's up everybody? This is isometric501 and today I want to go over another MMORPG that is currently being developed that I think is going a bit under the radar, but that I also think has a very good chance of being successful once it is released. Now, before we get into the rest of the video, I want to mention that I do have another channel that will be linked in the description where I'm going to be focusing completely on covering different MMOs, covering news for those MMOs, and then doing different guides and stuff like that when the MMOs come out. And I already have 2 different Corepunk videos on that channel, so go and check that out if you want to specifically look at just MMO content. This main channel is mainly just what I'm playing at the time, so if say I'm just grinding Lost Ark, there will still be Lost Ark videos on this channel, but that MMO channel is going to be something that I want to just focus on MMOs. And even if I'm not grinding an MMO all day every day, I will still be posting content on those MMOs, hopefully consistently on that channel. Now, I recently did a video going over Lost Ark, which is another MMORPG that's going to be released in the fall, going over a very similar premise that I think that game is going to be extremely successful. And the difference between that game and this game is Lost Ark was released for 3 years, I think had a lot more hype and eyes on it even before its release and up to this point of finally getting released in the West. And with everything considered, I think Lost Ark will be pretty much guaranteed to be a successful game on launch. But this game I'm talking about today, I think is going a bit more under the radar, but I do think it has a very good possibility and potential of being a successful and well-regarded game. And the game I want to talk about today is called Corepunk. Now, Corepunk is a open-world MMORPG with a isometric point of view, and the game was officially revealed and announced to the public in December of 2019. So it's been a few years since we have first learned about this game, but the game has been in development for quite a few years before it has been officially announced. The first time anyone got to see it, it actually seemed to be in a pretty decent state and pretty far along in its development. And mainly what I want to accomplish with this video is go over an overview of Corepunk and talk about why I think it has such a good chance of being successful and a well-regarded MMO. And like I said, Corepunk is a open world MMORPG, and just off the start of that, it being an open world game, a true open world game where you could technically walk from one side of the world to the other, that is already a major plus in my book, because I think a MMO being open world gives it that little bit of boost to having a better chance of being a successful and well-liked MMO. Just having that massive open world where you don't have to go through constant loading screens to get to different parts. It's not split up into small little sections, and you just have this massive world to explore, I think is always going to be a plus. It's not going to necessarily mean a game is going to be successful, but I think it does give a higher chance of that happening. Now, one of the major things you will notice first when looking at gameplay for Corepunk is the POV it has and the type of gameplay it's going for. So it's a isometric POV, pretty much the same thing as something like a League of Legends or Dota, so that top-down MOBA style of POV, while also having a skill layout and a playstyle very similar to those games as well. And even adding on top of that, if you go to the official Corepunk website and look at the classes that they have on the website so far and go into all of their abilities that are shown, the mana cost, cooldown, damage, and other specifics of these abilities are even shown to you in the same way the MOBA abilities are shown, with the increasing or decreasing mana cost, the decreasing cooldown, the increasing of damage as you level up. So the game is clearly going to draw some of that MOBA audience, which in my opinion can be a very good thing. League of Legends is one of the most popular games in the world. Dota still has a very big fan base. You have stuff like Heroes of the Storm that still has a ton of players. So there are a ton of people that enjoy that POV and that style of gameplay. And just a side note with the gameplay, in pretty much all the footage, most of the combat will look pretty slow in terms of the character movement speed and the attack speed. It got confirmed months and months ago that the developers are speeding up the game, so your character will move faster, you will attack faster, and the game will just have a higher pace in general, even at lower levels, so that's not really something to be too cautious on. And I think these systems and content that Corepunk is going for are the main reasons that I think it has a good chance of being a well-regarded MMO because it's taking systems and content that are used in a lot of the most popular MMORPGs and putting it into Corepunk. And even just their philosophy on how they're splitting up content is a nice breath of fresh air. So they have said that they want level and content to only be 40% of the game, and then 60% of the game to be completely focused on end game content. So essentially, you have 60% of the game open up to you once you hit max level. And I think just that philosophy is something that can play really well into making an MMO, because most of the most successful MMOs are not heavily focused on leveling. And I see a lot of the MMOs that end up failing are ones that don't have enough content to keep players playing after they hit the end game. And some of the content that you can expect from Corepunk on the PvE side is going to be dungeons, both for solo players and groups of up to 4 people, randomly generated dungeons. You have full-blown raids with raid parties, and raid parties in Corepunk will be anything over 4 players up to 40. You have mini bosses out in the world. You have big world bosses out in the open world. You have wandering bosses. You have camp systems, which are kind of similar to jungles and MOBAs, and that will encompass a lot of the different enemies you will be seeing throughout the world. You will come across these camps that have like a grouping of different enemies, maybe a stronger enemy with it, and you will have different versions of this. So you have rare camps, you will have elite camps, you'll maybe have camps with bosses in them that may require more players. And that's just a small amount of the PvE content. There will be a ton more. They've talked about having a horde mode / roguelike tower system where you can constantly climb a tower with increasing difficulty to test out your builds and see how high you can get in this tower for different rewards, and many other different types of content. Then on the PvP side, this game is going to also have a ton of content for people that mainly want to focus on PvP. First off, you have open world PvP just out in the massive open world, which you can toggle on and off in cities. This will also play very heavily into the fog of war. So just like MOBAs, there will be a fog of war. So if something's a certain distance away, say another player, that could set up an ambush on you around a corner that you won't be able to see. There will be craftable wards in the game, so you can try to get better vision, which by itself will create a lot of cool PvP scenarios. You have arenas and battlegrounds, and most likely you would have ranked versions of those as well, and those will be more instanced, more balanced PvP. There will be systems for open world PvP, kind of like karma systems. So if you just keep killing people that are, say, lower level or that don't want to fight, you could become a PKer and possibly lose loot by dying to other players. You'll be receiving currency in the form of honor points, killing players in any of these modes, so in instance arenas or battlegrounds, or just out in the open world. And there will most likely be more PvP systems tacked onto that when the game is fully released. And then there are some other systems that I think are much more important that a lot of people give credit for, and these are also present in a lot of the top other MMOs. And I'm going to use these comparisons specifically between Corepunk and World of Warcraft, because World of Warcraft is still the most popular MMO and still has a lot of these systems in the game. And I think getting the crowd of people who like World of Warcraft or Elder Scrolls Online or Final Fantasy that all share similar systems just increases the chance of Corepunk being successful. And some of these systems include achievement hunting, so achievements for pretty much anything. Pretty much any MMO that has achievements, there's a certain group of people that always want to go do these achievements. And I think they have mentioned that there will be achievements with different rewards. So say in World of Warcraft, you can do some specific raid achievements that will unlock you a mount. They will also have something similar to that in Corepunk. Then there's systems that are all in the vein of collectibles. So Corepunk will have rideable mounts that are pretty much the exact same as something like ESO or World of Warcraft, where you can just go collect different mounts to ride around that give you speed boost when you're riding them. And they will be collectible from pretty much every activity you can possibly think of in the game, and most likely also from the cosmetic cash shop. And collecting mounts and different things in a lot of the top MMOs is a massive activity for a lot of the player base. And then you also have the collection of gear cosmetics. And in Corepunk, gear works a little bit differently. So all your armor pieces are just cosmetic. The stats come from different pieces called artifacts, and any item you get in the game will essentially be added to a transmog library, just like in World of Warcraft, just like in Elder Scrolls Online. And that too is another collection activity that takes up a massive amount of time for a lot of players, and especially a lot of more casual players. And the main thing I'm getting at is that having a lot of these systems that are in a lot of the top MMOs that all these players are used to is a good thing in the long run for the health of the game, because it will entice people to come at least try out the game to see if they like it or not. Now, the next thing I want to go over are the classes for the game and how Corepunk is going to go about that. And I think this is a neutral point, because until you get to play the classes and see how fun they are, I don't think a specific system in how they go about classes is going to make the game more or less popular. I think it comes down to how they play, because you have a bunch of different ways of doing classes that all seem to work. You have Final Fantasy, where you're much more free to change up your jobs, which is essentially changing up different classes on the same character. You have something like World of Warcraft, which is much more tied down, and you choose a class and then you have 1 of 3 specs you can choose, and that's pretty much it, which is much more similar to Corepunk. So you have a lot of different options, and I think until you see how good or bad the playstyle and classes are, it's really a neutral point. But how they're going about this in Corepunk is you essentially have your class, so say something like a paladin, and then you have 3 weapon masteries. So you can think of these pretty much like specs in World of Warcraft, but they don't share near as much abilities or similarities compared to something like World of Warcraft specs. So essentially, you would choose one of these weapon masteries, and this would change the actual weapons you're using. So say one weapon mastery may use a 2-handed sword, one may be a sword and a shield, and then choosing your weapon mastery, you will get 4 different activatable abilities, so the 4 main abilities you're going to be using, and then you will get 1 special ability. So these are essentially built in a very similar way to how most MOBAs build their characters. So it's kind of like you have your 3 basic abilities, your ultimate, even though in Corepunk it doesn't seem to be as much built in that your R ability is your ultimate, and then your special ability is some type of activatable or passive that affects how that weapon mastery plays or has some synergy with your other abilities. And then you will have weapon mastery skill trees that you can choose different passive abilities and different augments to your abilities. And you can actually go to the official Corepunk website and look at 6 different classes that they have officially shown us so far. You can go and check all the 3 weapon masteries for all 6 of those classes, and check out all the abilities for all the weapon masteries, and even look at the specifics of damage values, mana values, cooldown amounts, and even look at what the abilities scale off of. So say if this ability has a stun, what stat that stun is going to scale off of, what stat that healing spell is going to scale off of. So you can actually get into a lot of the specifics of the classes already. And the last thing I want to go over is another thing that I think is a neutral point that doesn't really show me that the game is going to be more successful or less successful, and that is how the gearing is going to be working in Corepunk. So instead of gearing up and getting, a bunch of armor pieces, getting your helm, getting your shoulders, all those pieces, all your armor pieces are going to be cosmetic only. So you can go around looting enemies, killing enemies, get cosmetic pieces that you can equip and look different. There will also be a cosmetic cash shop for the game where you can buy different skins and cosmetic armor pieces through that. And then where you actually do your gearing is going to be in your weapon and in your artifacts. So this is another way in which Corepunk is similar to MOBAs. So essentially you have your weapon slot, which will have stats, can't have activatable abilities on. Then you'll have all your artifact slots, which is very similar to getting items in, say, League of Legends. So you can get items, they will all have different stats on them. They can all have different activatable abilities or different passives. So you could possibly get 6 new activatable abilities from your artifacts, or you could get 6 artifacts that are only passive and you just want as much stats as you can possibly get. And like I said, I think this is a neutral point, because until you play the game, you see how you go about gearing, doing your raids, doing your arenas, all that type of stuff. You really won't know how it feels to gear up in the game, which I think is the most important part. Now, something I do like with the system is that since it's not gear pieces that have, plate, cloth, leather, that type of stuff, a lot of these artifacts can be used by all the different classes. So if there's some super strong artifact, you have a much higher chance of the game being a bit more balanced, because you could also go use that and get that same thing and use it on your class, and your weapon mastery is the same as someone else is using it. And it also gives you the ability to choose to go into more passive gearing. So say you just want gear with all passive, so you don't have to add any more activatable abilities or effects in, or if you're someone someone that wants a bit more of a complex rotation and some more activatable options, you could choose to get a bunch of activatable artifacts to give you different effects and give you different options while in combat. And the developers have mentioned that there will be ultra rare legendary artifacts. So at the very least, there will be a lot of different artifacts and different rarity of artifacts to go and farm for. So that's pretty much all I want to go over for an overview of Corepunk and why I think it has a good chance to be a well-regarded MMO. And like I said, I will have a link in the description to my other channel that is mostly focused on MMOs. I will be posting a bunch more videos on Corepunk and other MMOs and going over all the other information we have about Corepunk because there is a ton. This is only just a bit of an overview. So go check that out if you want to check out specifically MMO content. So subscribe if you want to see more Corepunk or other videos. Leave a like if you liked the video. Leave a comment down below what you guys think about Corepunk, and thanks for watching.